Welcome to Primetime Mitch, and if you're sitting comfortably, it's Class 6 time. Mood, lighting, let's go. Today's feature is The Stranger from 1946, directed by Orson Welles. Orson takes the lead role in this movie as well, co-starring Edward G. Robinson and Loretta Young. There will be spoilers in this video. If you don't want to know what goes on in this movie and you'd rather watch it first and then come back and watch what I have to say about it, please stop now, go ahead and do it, and I'll see you then. Now, I saw this movie quite a while ago, but I wanted to revisit it because I was fascinated by it. It is Welles' third directed feature film and also his first film noir. Very much a film noir, this particular entry. What actually dragged me towards this movie in the first place was I'd read the premise, because often I tend to avoid the plots so I can just watch it blind and find out as I go along. But I really like the idea of a war criminal with damn near complete anonymity if it wasn't for a certain hobby tantamount to mania that he has for clocks. I had to watch it based on that alone. I found that quite quirky in itself. Obviously, it's still a serious subject matter. This is a Nazi war criminal, and it doesn't often delve too deeply into that. It is mainly centered around sort of a cat and mouse detective movie and doesn't go deep into the subject matter, which I think is probably for the best. So basically, you've got Agent Wilson, played by Edward G. Robinson, who I really like as an actor. I really enjoyed his performance in Scarlet Street, which I'm sure I'll be doing a review on at some point on this Class 6 category. He is trying to hunt for Franz Kindler, a war criminal who has pretty much created the idea of genocide. They release a former associate of his, 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄, into society in order to lead them back to Kindler to capture him. He's pretty much erased all of his identity. We see the journey back that 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄 makes to find Kindler, and obviously he's followed by Wilson. And Wilson gets taken out quite early on by 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄, who realizes he's been followed, and he ends up throwing a pulley at him at the gym, and it hits him in the head. And all it does is put a separation between Wilson and 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄, which is needed at that point. Otherwise, there's just no movie. We see Kindler has changed his name to Charles Rankin, and he is a popular school teacher in the town of Harper in Connecticut. He's now, ironically, a community figure. He meets up with 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄, and he has turned into sort of a religious fanatic at that point, and he explains to Kindler that the doors were open. I just walked out. It was the Lord that did it. It was God that freed me from prison. And at that point, he knows he's been sent as bait. You can tell with that distant look in his eyes, he's sort of go, I get what's going on here. At this point, I'm starting to see the thinking behind Franz Kindler and why he would choose Harper, Connecticut. It is a friendly town. Everyone is sort of together, they all know each other, it's very close-knit, and he marries the daughter of the Supreme Court Justice Adam Longstreet. Immediately that sort of puts him above suspicion. He's not just a stranger or a drifter, he's kind of integrated into society and he is in with important people. Therefore, I'm guessing he thinks that he is too important to be somebody like that. He's a respected member of the community. I think he almost chances that they overlook the fact he is actually, as the film is titled, a stranger. I like that the town is so nice and so decent, and the drugstore owner, Mr. Potter, is a really good character throughout, very likable. Doesn't do a whole lot of work. Everyone has to serve themselves in his store. All he does is sit there and play checkers to win money, 25 cents to be precise. And that is his character throughout, but he is a nice guy, and the town is a nice place. It's a very beautiful place, and the church clock in the center of town is very prominent. I think this amplifies the sense of a bad thing being inserted into it. You've got this lovely town and then you've got this one rogue in the center. I just think the pleasantness of the surroundings and the setting is deliberate. There's some really groundbreaking camera work in this. There's a lot of layers and dimensions to the way it's shot. There's a lot of panning from inside to out. And also, similar to the deep focuses you see in Citizen Kane, when Wilson and Potter are playing checkers in the store, you can see the mirror behind them and you see them through the mirror, and then the window further from that, you see the outside world. So there's a lot of layers, and obviously this is very important making movies going forward. There's a nice mixture of long and short scenes as well, so it all knits together in a certain way. So Wilson's sort of going through a list of strangers in town, newcomers in town, trying to find out who it could possibly be. Meanwhile, Kindler, aka Rankin, has realised what 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄 is all about, and he's taken advantage of his religious ramblings, and he has killed him in the forest and buried him in the same place. This leads to the dog sniffing around, and he realises he has to eliminate that too. So he has committed 2 crimes in a short space of time. Edward G. Robinson has this face where he sort of looks like he doesn't trust a soul that he speaks to, but he does have a moment at the dinner table when he gets invited over because he is posing as an antique dealer, and I'll just call him Rankin now until he's unveiled. It's a bit easier than keep swapping between the two names. Rankin talks at the dinner table about his opinions on history and of the Germans. It sort of comes up in conversation, and he gives it away by saying that Karl Marx is a Jew.
There's Marx. Proletarians unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains.
But Marx wasn't a German, Marx was a Jew.
What I quite liked about this was that, for one, Rankin knows that Wilson's on his case because he talks about having a head injury earlier in the day, which he knows that 𝐒𝐈𝐊𝐄 inflicted on him. But Wilson doesn't really know about him at all. He's obviously he might be a suspect on the list because he's a newcomer, but I don't think he really believes at any point that Rankin is actually Kindler. But it is only that realization hours later when he wakes up and realizes only a Nazi would make that sort of assumption. And I like that. It wasn't an immediate reaction. It took him some time. It was quite realistic. There's a lot of nice use of shadows in this movie. Obviously, this is the film noir. That's what you can expect. But I liked sometimes that the shadows were so powerful in the scenes that you got the feeling they were trying to tell you that this is almost a representation of Wilson shadowing Rankin throughout. Now, of course, Rankin's wife, Mary, has already met 𝐒𝐈𝐿𝐿 when he went to find him. So she's kind of a little skeptical about why that happened and a little bit confused. And she starts coming into it more. And I think she starts to enter this movie more when you realise how at risk she is. And that's what Wilson does. He plays on the risk to Mary when he acquires the services of her brother Noah. Wilson can see that Noah's not quite taken by Rankin. He obviously doesn't trust him, and he uses that and the threat to his sister to try and get him on board, to help him out, try and help him uncover this guy's true identity. There's a really great line from Mary when she's leaving the house at one point, which sort of backs up that thing about there's such a beautiful, lovely location that this guy is sort of poisoned. When she says, "In Harper, there's nothing to be afraid of."
Pretty late.
That's all right. In Harper, there's nothing to be afraid of.
I like that, the insertion of that line. It was like, yeah, you really don't know the half of it. Rankin starts realizing that Wilson's onto him, and this is where he concocts a story about being blackmailed by 𝐒𝐈𝐿𝐿, and that's why he came looking for him that day. And it's an amazingly crafted story about like an ex-partner that killed herself and her brother was blackmailing him over it. It was just amazing how he could make up such a story, but you sort of understand why he is where he is and how he's got to where he is by the fact that he could make something up like that and say it so coldly and brashly. He, however, is a much better liar than Mary is. When Mary realizes that he is killed, and she obviously doesn't know the reasoning for it, the real reasoning for it, because she doesn't know his identity. When she is questioned by Wilson, when she is questioned by her father, she is such a terrible liar. There is no eye contact. There is blatant guilt in there. And it just wasn't believable at all that she would be completely unaware of anything that was going on. Wilson even goes as far as brings Mary to her father's house to show her footage of the Holocaust. And also, this is the first time that footage of this kind was shown on film. This is a real groundbreaking moment, and it is there to shock Mary and to make her realize exactly what her husband has done and exactly who he is. I always found Loretta Young to look like a very young John Collins. She's a very striking appearance. This is a good performance in this. I think sometimes she maybe over dramatizes it, but I guess they really cover that up in the movie by saying she's having a breakdown, and she's really losing it because she is slowly realizing what she's done. There's a fantastic line in this movie where Wilson says,
"She has the facts now, but she won't accept them. They're too horrible for her to acknowledge. Not so much that Rankin could be Kindler, but that she could ever have given her love to such a creature."
This is great, and this can be applied to anything now. It's that conflict. It's where you aim your frustrations and your upset at. This can go for relationships and mistakes you make. Are you more angry at them for being who they are, or are you angry at yourself for giving yourself to that person, to allow that person in, for loving and trusting and respecting that person? And I think that's just a really good line that I think sticks to a lot of situations today. Bit weird. I'm not going to lie, I found it very strange how Judge Longstreet refers to his daughter as sister and she refers to him by his name, Adam. I don't know Please put in the comments if you know a little bit historically about that kind of thing, and whether that was a rule in a certain part of the States or wherever, or in a certain class. I'm not so sure, but I found that to be pretty confusing at one point. I actually went back just to check I got the characters right. I love the fact that his only form of identification is his manic obsession with clocks. I don't think that's actually played upon that much. I don't see a lot of clocks in the house, apart from at the end when he's sort of about to reveal himself and they have the argument and he's in front of the clock. But I don't see him consistently in the presence of them or manipulating them or fixing them. The only real indication you get is when he goes up the clock tower and he's fixing that tower for the town. But I don't see a manic obsession in there. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of him obsessing over clock faces and maybe having them all around the house, maybe fixing them in between, maybe having small pocket watches on his person. So that wasn't as clear as it could have been, but it's still a great premise. It's a nice little thing. It's a very unusual thing to be a fan of, and there's certainly an unusual way of identifying somebody. Mary is lying to herself eventually. She doesn't want to believe her husband is a Nazi war criminal or he's a monster. And it does sort of sway. You don't know what it is. Is it disillusional blind faith, or is it just pure stubbornness that she doesn't want to admit what she knows? But either way, it does get to the point where they have to wait for something more drastic to happen to uncover him and to actually convince her that this is what is going on. This is what's happening to her. I'm sort of torn with that, because she does speak to, I'll now call him Franz Kindler. She speaks to Franz when he's up at the top of the clock. She's going, you know, it's okay. You know, they tried to trick me with this, but I didn't believe it and all this. But I was like, well, if you didn't believe it, then why, when they told you, were you in tears? Why were you crying? I think she knew. She was just trying to tell him that to try and keep herself safe, and also maybe trying to convince herself as well. There is an absolutely outrageous moment at the party towards the end when one of the townsfolk actually goes up to Wilson and says, "You are our #1 suspect in this murder inquiry."
You're Mr. Wilson, aren't you? Do you know you're our #1 suspect in our murder case?
Oh?
So far, you're the only suspect. Potter put the finger on you. He thinks you committed the crime to get possession of some priceless antique.
Mr. Wilson?
Very strange thing to say in such a jovial gathering like that. I mean, the eyebrows went up into my hat at that point. I was like, what the? It's a really nice finish to the movie as well. I will give credit as well to Mary's one-handed climb up that ladder. I am terrified of heights, so I couldn't go up there with 2 hands and 5 or 6 legs, whereas she just one hand on and then just all the way up to the top of the belfry. I found that very, very impressive. She also has a nice little look back at the ground where she could have died had the earlier attempt on her life proved fruitful. It's not a very subtle hiding place in the top of the clock tower when apparently he's obsessed with clocks, but I guess you've got to conclude the movie there. And it's a good finish. It's quite a brutal finish, really. But once it's done and once Franz is put to justice in a roundabout, ironic way, it's pretty much over quickly after that. There isn't a lot more to say or do on the matter. It's been sewn up. It wouldn't need to be dragged out any further. Running time's about 1.5 hours. It's a really good little movie. I enjoyed it the first time. I enjoyed it even more the second time, so I kind of tend to need a couple of viewings just to sew things up that are going on in my head. I wouldn't say it's like the most incredible work of art I've ever seen, but there is indeed a lot of very nice visual work and a lot of effort's gone into it. The acting's very good. Like I said, I think Edward G. Robinson is outstanding in this, as he usually is. Orson Welles really directed this to prove himself as a real director, as far as I'm aware, and he does a great job of it. And I think what's great as well is that not one point does Charles Rankin, aka Franz Kindler, not once does he come across as in any way decent. He always has like an air of menace about him. He's very emotionless and expressionless. Doesn't look like there's any feeling behind the eyes. And I think that's great because you never lose sight of what he is. You never warm to him at any point. There's no tragedy in what happens to him at the end. And that's what I think. That's where I think Orson Welles plays the part very, very well. And it's also very well written. I believe it was nominated for an Oscar as well for the screenwriting. So it's a really good movie. This was The Stranger from 1946. I really urge you to go watch it, give it a go, and if you like this video and you like this review, please smash a like down below and subscribe to the channel. We are growing ever so slowly, but it's getting there. Please drop something in the comments if you know something about this movie that I haven't mentioned. This obviously was just on face value for the average movie lover. I'm not exactly a student, but I do have an opinion and a perception. So thanks for your support, guys. Thank you for watching this video. Please support as much as you can. Please drop those likes or subscribes or shares, hit that notification bell, and I will see you soon. This has been Class 6.